Well, welcome to 284 Media. I'm Kamal Haynes, your host today for this special interview. Today joining us in studio is Mrs. Lorna Smith, who is the Global Currents Conference Coordinator on this occasion. And we also have Mr. Gareth Thomas, who is part of the Global Currents Conference Committee. But they will be speaking on a week of celebrations in store for honoring pioneer of the BVI Financial Services, Dr. Robert Matavious, OBE, and the plans in store for him. But before we get to those details, let's first take a quick commercial break.
You value traditions.
Today.
You value music. You value education. Family.
I love you.
Service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love. Life. At Popular, we're committed to you and everything our community values. For the things you value the most, count on us. Popular.
Well, welcome back, viewers. Well, as mentioned previously, we have with us Mrs. Lorna Smith and Mr. Gareth Thomas in studio. Welcome, Mrs. Smith and Mr. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Kamal. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. You're here to speak on this very historic occasion honoring Dr. Robert Matavious, who is the retired Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the BVI Financial Services. We obviously would have known the tremendous service he would have provided to the territory over two decades or more. So can you just speak about the event, you know, a week of festivities commencing from tomorrow, the two-day conference. Let's inform the public on what is in store for Dr. Matavious.
Well, Kamal, we talk about beginning tomorrow, but in fact, last night the BVI would have seen an event that was put on by the government honoring the legacy of Robert Mathavious, the public servant. In fact, there was a documentary that traced his life from the beginning right up to his retirement, so to speak, with colleagues, friends, and so on, talking about him. And there were, of course, a number of cultural events. So the week kicked off last evening, and as Gareth and I have finished with this interview, we moved to Meet the Regulator Forum, which would be the last forum that Robert will address as the CEO of the BVI Financial Services Commission. I say as the CEO because this whole event was planned about 20 months ago, I think, and more than 20 months. And with COVID, and COVID especially, we've had to put it off until now. So he will make his last address to the industry in about an hour or so at 10 o'clock. And then tomorrow evening is when the committee really gets into gear with our gala dinner at Scrub Island, followed on Thursday by an international conference dubbed the Global Currents Conference under the whole banner of the house that Mathavious built.
And let's talk about the conference, which will be, I think it's a two-day conference, which starts, well, the conference is on Thursday, and I know it's largely sold out, so you're just here basically to educate the public on the conference and what it entails. So speak about the conference.
Yes, I'm very happy to, Kamal, and it's a pleasure to be on. As Lorna mentioned, we started planning this about 20 months ago, but due to COVID, we had a few setbacks on timing. But fortunately, as soon as we put word out to the leading authorities internationally, regionally, and locally about this conference being a dedication to Robert, but also in terms of the way forward, nobody wavered in their support of coming forward to be part of it. So we're very fortunate. We've got a great lineup of speakers and panelists for the event on Thursday. And they range from international leading regulators, economists, lawyers, also a great cadre of speakers coming from the region, to support Robert, as well as a whole host of excellent cadre of local talent that will be on show tomorrow. So we've got a wonderful lineup of subject areas, very topical. We've got global tax, which, as you know, you would have seen a lot of in the press in relation to the global tax initiatives. We have Global Britain, which is very timely, following the UK's exit from the EU. We have Centres of Excellence. We have Asia Trends, Talent Management, to name but a few. But we've got some excellent people coming from abroad, which we're very excited about. And we've been very fortunate that the Financial Services Commission provided some seed money to get the conference off the ground, but with the overwhelming support of the financial services sector, who straight away wanted to be part to help get this off the ground in terms of sponsorship. We've had overwhelming support there from our private sector colleagues.
Indeed, the response from the industry has been tremendous, beginning with platinum sponsors going right down. Everybody has been quite enthusiastic, very enthusiastic about supporting the conference and supporting the legacy of Dr. Robert Mathavious. I will, of course, be back and forth in terms of Robert and Dr. Mathavious, because I knew Robert from growing up as a boy until now. So forgive me if I go back and forth, but it is a great legacy. I think it's fair to say that Robert, even though he was not the person who passed the legislation, because that is made by the legislators of the day, even though he was not responsible for passage of the legislation, in terms of guidance, in terms of advice, it was Robert who we would credit for the twin pillar economy that we now have. We've moved from tourism to tourism and financial services. Financial services today contributes 60 cents out of every dollar that the government spends. And I'm careful to say the government spends, because when you look at the multiplier effect, it's even greater than 60 cents out of every dollar. So it is fair to say that financial services is the bigger in terms of revenues. And Robert Mathavious, his legacy should be celebrated, because it was he who led in terms of where we are today.
And I would just add to that and echo, for those of your viewers, particularly the younger generation of viewers who might not be as completely au fait with the career of Robert Matavious, I would certainly encourage your viewers to watch the documentary released by the public sector yesterday following the event at the college. Very informative for your viewers there, particularly the younger ones who would not have known what Robert has done for the BVI. Certainly one of the greatest sons that the BVI has ever had, and one of the greatest minds.
And also, too, I know that is something I wanted to touch on, because, as you said, there are a lot of persons who may not be fair of what Dr. Matavious have done for the territory, and as we would know today, that is the majority of where the bulk of money comes in to the BVI's economy, which is the financial services industry. So could you just touch on some of the key things he would have done in the financial services industry that would have stood out amongst the many, I'm sure, that he would have been at the foot of his career?
Well, if I could go back a little bit and start, we had a double taxation treaty with the United States and other countries. And the United States double taxation treaty with the British Virgin Islands came to an end in 1980 with Ronald Reagan as president, the late Ronald Reagan, terminating it. We have to, as Robert will tell you himself, we cannot just credit him for all that has been accomplished. The Business Companies Act, the International Business Companies Act, as it was originally known, was drafted by Mr. Lewis Hunt with support from other persons in the United States, as the documentary that Gareth mentioned will tell you about. And then Robert Mathavious, as financial secretary at the time, continued to build on that International Business Companies Act. As a result of that, with all the business that came or that continues to come out of China in particular, in fact, globally, Mr. Mathavious was able to build on that. In addition to companies, last time I checked, we had nearly 400,000 active business companies. But in addition to companies, we have the whole area of funds. I think we are the second largest in the world. We have a large number of trusts. We have insolvency, restructuring, and all that business. And Dr. Mathavious was always at the helm, making sure that we were ahead of the curve, as he loves to put it, in terms of regulations, in terms of our meeting the international regulatory standards, in terms of us being competitive.
That's right. And I would just add to that, Robert's name, Robert's footprint, has been on all financial services legislation that's been passed in the BVI for the last 35 years. But perhaps more important than that, when people think of the BVI around the world, they think of Robert Matavious. His name is synonymous with the Financial Services Commission in the BVI, but also his reputation regionally and internationally is second to none. There are so many excellent regulators and lawyers who have retired many years ago who know Robert, and there are people in their careers today practicing in Asia, in Europe, in the Middle East, and the Americas and LATAM, who also know Robert and know exactly what his legacy has been to BVI. So you cannot say BVI Financial Services without thinking of Robert Matavious.
Indeed, he's a great speaker, he's a great unifier, he's a great cheerleader, if you want to call it that, for financial services. I mean, there was so much that he did over the years. In 2000, I think it was, he created, or he was one of the architects, I should say, I shouldn't say he created. He was one of the architects of the International Trade and Investment Organization that really led the way in terms of the non-OECD countries, so that we were internationally respected, internationally recognized as international financial centers.
And Robert's never been afraid to think outside the box. Obviously, in his senior position, sometimes people play the safe road there and just try and follow the pack in terms of their competitors' jurisdictions. But Robert was never like that. He was always looking further ahead on how to defend BVI's position, not just today, but in the future. And lots of examples of that. Back in 2000s, when ring fencing was a big term, and it was Robert who came up with the idea on how to solve the ring fencing issue, and that led to the IBC Act being redone and rebranded to the BVI BC Act. There are so many initiatives that have been spawned out of Robert's ideas. I don't know how he's had the energy. He's been involved in so much. I mean, I've been fortunate. I've been here for the last 20 years, and I've seen firsthand Robert's passion in so many things. It's not just the Financial Services Commission that he's ran. He's also been instrumental in setting up the International Tax Authority, the Financial Investigation Agency, the Commercial Court, the Arbitration Centre. So much.
So many things.
So-
As was said last night by one of the persons on the documentary, Robert was a person who sought out and found opportunities for everyone in the territory. He was he is, because he's very much with us, although he's retired. He's very committed to young persons, and that's why we're so excited going back to the program on Thursday, Gareth. That's why we're so excited about that whole area of talent management.
Yes.
Because he's very concerned about that. He's very committed to that. Imagine the Financial Services Commission. Again, one of the persons on the documentary last night mentioned the fact that they mentioned the fact that he's committed to young people. And it took me back to the Financial Services Commission itself. It didn't start out with 90%, I would say, BVI landers or 90% BVI lander professionals. It started out with a number of persons whom Robert brought in to run the areas that I just mentioned. But he made sure that there were understudies, persons who could sit beside them and learn. And today we have a commission that, for the most part, Gareth, is BVI led.
BVI led, very, very much so, and he's left behind a very strong cadre of BVI Islanders who are going to take the commission forward. One area that I had the benefit to work closely with Robert on over the years is the Financial Services Institute at the college. For those of you who don't know that, that's essentially BVI's business school at the college, which teaches and puts people through professional courses and professional training in financial services here in the BVI. Before the FSI really got off the ground many years ago, people from the BVI who wanted to get trained and qualified in financial services would often have to leave the BVI and go to the UK for that training, or try and study by themselves, which is very difficult with these exams. Robert was adamant that we needed to change that, and he chaired the Financial Services Institute for many years, and took it to a place where we now have a number of professionally qualified trainers and educators in the business school who provide services on the ground here to BVI students. And we're fortunate enough to say that we've put literally hundreds and probably thousands of BVI Islanders through professional qualifications which are internationally recognized, and they got those qualifications here at the FSI at the college, in a large part thanks to Robert Matavious' drive to make that happen.
Indeed, and another area that Robert is very keen on, and it's still within the scope of young people and training, is innovation. He's constantly, as you said, thinking outside of the box, moving the ball forward, and an area that is growing certainly in the British Virgin Islands and globally is that whole area of fintech. And it's a huge area, and an area that Robert was very keen to see develop, and it's developing very nicely as well.
And due to the overwhelming support by the financial services sector for Robert and this conference and the gala dinner tomorrow night, we should be in a good position to be able to announce soon what scholarship funds we've raised as a result of this, which will go towards BVI Islander scholarships at the Financial Services Institute at the college. So once again, we're incredibly grateful to our financial services colleagues who have stepped up there with their very generous support and sponsorship. And as one of the committee members of our planning committee would always say, after all, this is for Robert.
I mean, you touched on a lot of things, a lot of questions I had to ask initially in that lengthy discussion on Dr. Matavious, which I'm sure the public will obviously appreciate. Let's a few things I want to touch on that you would have mentioned before, just to magnify it. I know one of the questions I had too is the last one you spoke about, which is the sponsorship. The scholarship, sorry, that you will be creating in honor of Dr. Matavious. Can you speak to you know, how many persons this will benefit and how this scholarship will be distributed? Will it be an annual program where a certain amount of persons in the financial services industry are awarded a scholarship on an annual basis? Just speak about this. Speak about the scholarship and how plans are in place to basically roll this out.
Yeah, sure, Kamal. As you can imagine, with this week of events, this has took a huge amount of planning from the planning committee, because we wanted to make sure each of the events this week was fitting and it was a fitting tribute to Robert Matavious. In terms of the scholarship itself, what will happen after the conference is there will be a committee put together in terms of how we will structure the scholarship going forward. It will likely be in the way of some form of endowment that will be managed, because there are a lot of sponsors who are keen to provide annual funding to this scholarship. In terms of the mechanics, in terms of how people can apply and what that would look like, that's all to be framed after this week. But we're excited to put that together, because that's all part of Robert's legacy in terms of scholarships going forward for financial services education here in the BVI.
I also want to touch on this. It was a question I would have initially asked at the press conference, the virtual press conference a couple of months ago, where I asked in terms of were there any plans basically in store to rename one of the financial services institute or a section of the H. Lavington Community College that deals with financial services after the name in honor of Dr. Matavious, you know, obviously with his significant contribution to the territory. Have there been any further talks since that question?
Yes, Kamal, we are thinking about it, and by the end of the week, we should know more, but I would say yes and leave it right there at the moment.
Okay. And in terms of, I know Dr. Matavious would have had a few quotes and sayings, you know, throughout his career that would have stayed a lot and meant a lot to a lot of people. Mrs. Smith, can you talk about some of these quotes that he would have had or sayings that Dr. Matavious is well known for?
Certainly. The documentary last night started off with one, and Robert himself, I think, said it in his speech, and that is God is a BVI lander.
Yes, that's his most
with all the things that we have been through, it's not just the hurricanes, it's the international standard setters constantly moving the goalpost and being able to meet those new standards. It's all the changes that the United Kingdom, Europe, and what have you have made, and every time we've met the standard. And one of his more famous quotes is God is a BVI lander. And yes, the hurricane was very important. We thought that it was going to be, well, it was devastating. But we thought that it was one that we may not have come out of as easily as we did, and God was with us. Another one that he liked to say was, it is better for us to be at the table, the negotiating table, rather than being on the menu. This was kind of using it figuratively. So, and so every time that goalpost or whatever was moved, we would be at the table to make sure that we were part of the negotiating. Others that you could think of, Gary?
There's one thing that really kind of stands out in my memory when I think of Robert over the years. And Unfortunately, most people in the BVI, even his staff, have not seen some of his greatest speeches because they've been played out on the regional or international stage. But one in particular, which his staff did get to see, was the day after Hurricane Irma. He called all his staff into the commission, for everyone who could get there. But he made it clear that it was mandatory. And so everybody crowded into the Financial Services Commission building. And Robert stood up. And I was not there, but I know people who were there, and I spoke to them minutes after. They said his speech, his rousing speech, was synonymous with any leading speech throughout the generations. It put goosebumps on the back of people's necks and essentially said, this is what we have been training for. We are the FSC. We are resilient. This is what we do. We need to make sure we are operational now. And the great thing is, the financial services industry around the world, most of them didn't even know Hurricane Irma happened because the FSC was incorporating companies. I think it was within a day of Hurricane Irma.
Within a week.
So the FSC, BVI, financial services industry, never missed a beat because of Hurricane Irma, and that beat was very much set by Rob Mathavious in that speech.
Indeed, and I recall senior members of staff who were overseas. There were people in New York, people in Hong Kong, people in the United Kingdom, and Robert said, stay there, so that our international services could continue. And they stayed there, and the rest, as we say, is history. We even had our commercial court operating remotely and from St. Lucia.
That's right.
You know, again within a couple of weeks, and all because of the mindset and the ingenuity of Robert. That's the kind of person that he is.
Okay, well, lastly, I just want to touch on this is topics that will be discussed during the conference. Just reiterate the topics that will be discussed during the conference, and also for those persons that are interested in probably tuning in, will it be streamed live? How can persons view the conference if possible?
If I could start with the last one first, we did invite persons to tune in virtually or to let us know if they were interested in joining virtually. But the response, unfortunately, for whatever reason, was not the kind of response that we expected. But we do have a full house. We do have a full house in these COVID times of 100 persons at the conference. As Garrett started to say, from everywhere. We have persons from the United Kingdom. We have people from France. We have people joining us virtually from Hong Kong. We have from the United States. And as he said, we have our own BVI professionals. Gareth, you want to speak to the topics?
Yes. We're delighted to have a leading expert in the tax policy area at the OECD. So he will be one of our flagship speakers. And I think in terms of attendance, the conference is sold out, as is the gala dinner. The gala dinner was oversubscribed, I think, by tenfold. It was a hot ticket around town. Mm-hmm. So those of you who've got a ticket for tomorrow night, I think we're all going to have some fun. It's going to be a great time. In terms of the conference itself, when we were planning it, we thought that we had to make sure that it was available online in case we were having a COVID spike. We were concerned that by offering it online, that people would want to actually choose to go online rather than attend in person. But we were delighted that actually people wanted to come in person, not just because they want to pay their respects to Robert, but because of the quality of the event that's been put together. You know, I like to say I've been living in BVI for many years now, and it's the conference I'm probably the most looking forward to because of the excellent cadre of speakers that we've got on show on Thursday. So we've got some great topics, and it's going to be it's going to be very informative.
We cannot end without expressing our gratitude to the government and the persons in the Ministry of Health, the Department of Health, Dr. Georges, the Minister of Health himself, for giving us the permission to have 100 persons at the International Arbitration Center. Of course, we thank our International Arbitration Center itself, Mr. Francois Lassalle and his team, for accommodating us. In terms of the topics, though, we're going to be dealing with global regulations. Gareth mentioned them before, but just to mention them again. Global regulations and the impact on international finance centers. Global Britain, the impact of Brexit, what Global Britain really means in a hard way, in a soft way. We're going to be looking at Asia trends, Latin America. We have a number of experts coming in from there. We're going to be looking at talent management, which we spoke a lot about, and centers of excellence, which will be looking at the future. And then we will have a wrap-up.
And I would just encourage your viewers, particularly your younger viewers, again, to watch the documentary on Facebook, which the public service sector put out last night. And if that tweaks your interest to get into financial services, I would urge you to speak to Dr. Derry Hodge, who's the director of the Financial Services Institute at H. Laverty Stout Community College. Derry knows all the professional courses inside out, and he would be able to give you great guidance and facilitate you taking part in those financial services courses, which are really the bedrock qualifications to be part of financial services in this world today.
Well, I want to thank you, Mrs. Smith and Mr. Thomas, for joining us and for that very informative session. Obviously informing the public on what's in store for Dr. Matavious. OBE, obviously, he would have contributed a lot in the financial services industry, being that of the pioneer, and obviously for informing the public, on the very comprehensive documentary, as you alluded to, that was released yesterday. So
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Well, there you heard it, viewers, from Mrs. Lorna Smith and Mr. Gareth Thomas speaking on the events that are set in stone for tomorrow and Thursday, respectively. I hope you guys had a obviously it was a very informative session. I hope you guys take in a lot that was said on Dr. Robert Matavious, OBE, who obviously would have contributed a lot to the BVI financial services industry, that being the pioneer of the financial services industry. Thank you for joining us, and do enjoy.